When the HOA slapped me with a $5,000 fine for hunting, I didn't argue, I smiled. Because what they didn't know was that the land they hiked every morning wasn't theirs, and when I found out the truth, I turned their entire empire upside down, one signature at a time. 2 years ago, I moved to Green Valley Estates chasing quiet. After 8 years in the military and 5 more in cramped Seattle tech offices, I wanted one thing: space. A place where the loudest sound was wind through the trees, not honking horns or office chatter. Green Valley looked like the dream. Big homes with manicured lawns, forest in the backyard, and just far enough from the city to feel peaceful. The $450 quarterly HOA fee stung, but the realtor promised it was worth it for award-winning landscaping and immaculate community spaces. What she didn't mention was the person behind the curtain, Evelyn Richardson. Imagine a woman who treats bylaws like scripture and power like oxygen. She wasn't just HOA president, she was the queen of Green Valley. 5 years unchallenged, rules enforced with a smile that never reached her eyes. At first I kept my head down, paid dues, mowed the lawn at regulation height, ignored the meetings. I wasn't looking for drama, I wanted peace. But I had one thing Evelyn couldn't control: my love for hunting. It wasn't just sport. It was family tradition, something my grandfather taught me back in Montana. I thought it would be harmless. I had no idea that one deer, one November morning, would light the fuse that nearly blew this neighborhood apart. One weekend, I wandered into a stretch of forest that felt untouched. 80 acres of towering evergreens, soft moss trails, and a crystal stream cutting through the middle. It was perfect, exactly the kind of place my grandfather would have called good ground. Curious, I checked county records. The land belonged to Frank Williams, an 83-year-old living in Florida. He'd owned it for decades but hadn't set foot there in years. I tracked down his email and wrote him, explaining I wanted permission to hunt respectfully, legally, no damage done. To my surprise, Frank replied the next day, "Son, I haven't been back in years. If you want to hunt, you have my blessing. Just send me a picture if you bag something nice." It felt like a gift. What I didn't realize was that for years, Evelyn and her loyal HOA crew had been using that land as if it were theirs. They had carved out trails, set up benches, even installed bird feeders, all without Frank's knowledge. To them, it wasn't Frank's land, it was their private nature preserve. That detail mattered, because the moment I stepped into Frank's woods with my rifle, I was no longer invisible to the HOA. I had just trespassed, not on land, but on Evelyn's illusion of control. And that was something she would never forgive. That crisp November morning, I left before dawn. My boots crunched over frosted leaves as I settled in near a clearing Frank had recommended. Hours passed in silence until, just after sunrise, an 8-point buck stepped out of the trees. One clean shot. The deer went down instantly. My heart raced, not from adrenaline, but from gratitude, a tradition carried forward. But before I could field dress the buck, voices cut through the stillness. Evelyn emerged with her entourage. 5 women in matching yoga jackets, water bottles in hand, gossiping about neighbors. The moment she saw me, her face twisted into horror. "What on earth are you doing?" she shrieked, fumbling for her phone. "This is a protected area. Who gave you permission to murder animals here?" I tried to explain. "The landowner gave me permission." She cut me off with a wave. "We manage these trails. Hunting is absolutely prohibited." She snapped photos, shouted threats, and marched off, leaving me with a sinking realization. The HOA wasn't just about mailboxes and lawns. They wanted to control everything, even land they didn't own. 3 days later, an envelope was taped to my front door. Inside, an official-looking notice. Violation: cruel hunting activities, community disturbance, fine $5,000 payable within 30 days. I laughed out loud. Then anger hit. The HOA had no jurisdiction over Frank's land. None. Yet Evelyn was parading this fine like gospel. I called my neighbor Sarah, one of the few kind souls around. She sighed. "Evelyn's been bragging about those trails for years. She even tells new families they're a perk of living here. She's not letting go without a fight." That's when I decided, fine or no fine, I'd show up at the next HOA meeting and put the truth on record. The meeting was packed. Evelyn sat at the head of the table like a judge. Beside her, Marcus, the Yesman vice president, and Richard, the uneasy treasurer. "Ah, Mr. Holloway," Evelyn said sweetly. "Perhaps you'd like to explain why you think it's appropriate to engage in violent activities in our nature preserve." I stood, calm, ready. "First," I began, "I was hunting legally with a state license, on private property, with written permission from the landowner." I laid Frank's email on the table. "Second, that land isn't HOA property. Never has been. It belongs to Frank Williams. You've been trespassing." The room went silent. Richard squinted at the papers. "He seems to have a point, Evelyn." Evelyn's smile faltered. "That's where you're mistaken. These trails have been community resources for a decade. Maintenance, benches, bird feeders, established use." Marcus chimed in. "And firearms near our homes pose a danger, especially to children." I realized then, this wasn't about rules, it was about power. Evelyn had claimed land that wasn't hers and built her authority on it. And in that moment, a thought sparked in my mind. If Frank was still thinking about selling, maybe I could change the game forever. That night I called Frank. He sighed when I told him the HOA was using his land. I never gave them permission. And honestly, I've been thinking of selling medical bills, Frank has said, if you're serious, I'm interested. 1 week later, after paperwork, signatures, and emptying a big chunk of my savings, the deed was mine, 80 acres. The very land Evelyn claimed as hers. I didn't tell anyone, not yet, because I wanted to see her face when she learned the truth. 2 days later, Evelyn and Marcus showed up at my door with smug smiles and a folder of threats. Mason, Evelyn said, this is your last chance to pay, otherwise we'll take legal action. I smiled back. Funny you say that. I've got paperwork too. I slid the deed across the table, my name, my property, the very land they'd been trespassing on. You'll remove every trail, bench and feeder within 7 days and withdraw all your fraudulent part plans, or my attorney will see you in court. For the first time, Evelyn's mask cracked. She wasn't the queen anymore. She was cornered, but Evelyn didn't surrender. Not yet. Anonymous notes appeared on my truck. Animal killers aren't welcome. My garbage cans mysteriously stayed at the curb. Parents whispered about me at school functions. The HOA flooded me with new violation notices, parking trash, anything they could invent. But behind the scenes, I was documenting everything and digging deeper. What I found would prove Evelyn wasn't just overreaching. She was stealing data at the next HOA meeting. Evelyn tried to paint me as a villain, a selfish outsider blocking community trails. But I came prepared. Emails, permits, fundraising records, proof that the HOA had collected tens of thousands for a nature park on land they never owned. Proof that those funds were funneled to her husband's consulting firm. The room exploded. Neighbors shouted, demanding refunds. The treasurer turned pale and Evelyn, for the first time, she looked small, powerless. Local reporters picked up the story, so did the sheriff's office. Evelyn's empire wasn't just cracking, it was collapsing. By the end of the month, Evelyn was gone. She and her husband sold their house quietly, their reputations in shreds. The HOA was restructured under Sarah, who prioritized real community, not control. As for me, I fenced the property, posted signs, and later opened a real trail-safe, legal, respectful named after Frank Williams. A tribute to the man who unknowingly gave me the key to defeating Evelyn. The $75,000 Evelyn had stolen, recovered and turned into a scholarship fund for students studying ethics and leadership. A fitting irony. Today, I still hunt on my land, this time with full support from neighbors who finally saw the truth. The HOA still exists, but now it works for people, not against them. And Evelyn, last I heard, she's living in an apartment with no HOA at all. Poetic justice. Sometimes, standing your ground doesn't just protect your rights, it changes everything.